Toronto FC never wants to see a penalty spot again as they fall 3-1 on penalties to the Montreal Impact in the Canadian Championship final. Of course, Montreal Impact now advanced to the CONCACAF Champions League. Toronto FC fails to win a fourth straight title. Guys, just what did you make of last night?
Pretty exciting night once again. You know, these games, especially the second legs between Toronto and Montreal, never disappoint. Both teams had enough chances to win it, but I thought Montreal in the end deserved their title. I
would agree with you. Montreal deserved it. It was a fantastic game. I thought the first half was maybe a little bit slower than I expected in terms of the atmosphere in the stadium, but certainly once Endo scored, and as we got closer and closer to the inevitable penalty shootout, the atmosphere certainly grew within the stadium. It was a great night.
And here we see those penalties, of course. Toronto FC hitting the post twice. Montreal Impact made all of their penalty kicks. There you see the celebration. Oli, you said that you thought Montreal was more deserving. Why do you think they were more deserving of a Canadian championship over two legs?
I thought over the 180 minutes as a whole, they executed their game plan better than TFC did. You know, in the first leg, I thought they were the better team, particularly in the first half. Toronto went at the races in that game, and Montreal played much quicker, much more intent about the way they played. And then on Wednesday night, you know, I just thought Montreal came in, they knew the job they had to do, they had to defend and counter-attack, and I thought the chances they had were just as good as the ones TFC were able to create. So overall, I just thought they were worthy winners.
More deserving?
If not better chances than TFC. Yeah, they're fully deserving of it. They took care of their business in the home leg, won that, and then they managed the game at BMO Field on Wednesday night. They did exactly what they had to do. They defended stoutly. Didn't allow TFC too many really serious. There were a few half chances for Toronto FC, but nothing overly challenging until obviously Endo gets the goal, and then it got a little bit back and forth. The game definitely opened up in the second half.
You know why they're more deserving? They're more deserving because they went for it in both legs. They put out strong teams in both legs. The competition meant more to them. So my question to you, Oliver Platt, will Toronto FC regret the lineup they put out in that first leg? Yes, they survived it, got out of there with a 1-0 loss, set up nicely for the return leg. Didn't happen for them in the return leg, but will they regret the lineup they put out at Saputo Stadium?
Yeah, with the benefit of hindsight, yes. You know, I understand.
This show's all about hindsight, Ollie.
I understand the thinking. You know, obviously they put a lot of emphasis on that LAFC game. They're trying to chase fourth place in MLS and get that home playoff game, but yeah, this is a trophy, and I thought at the end of the day, Toronto will probably live to regret that lineup they put out in the first leg.
I think in all reality, and not to take anything away from the competition, for Montreal, this was really their last stand. It looks like they probably won't make the MLS Cup playoffs, so this was their big thing. Toronto FC, we know, will be playing in the postseason, so they're chasing something else as well. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it did mean a lot more to the Impact. It certainly meant a lot more to the Impact fans who were still outside BMO Field at 11:30 on Wednesday night, 2 hours after the game was over, chanting and reveling in their victory.
Everybody talks about penalties and how you should go about converting a penalty. Should your mindset be? Should you pick a side? Should you try and read the goalkeeper? But why has Toronto FC struggled from the penalty spot so much? Again, 3 cup finals now. They've lost on penalties. What have you seen from them?
I think there are some mental scars there now. You know, when you lose even one cup final by a shootout, it inevitably affects you the next time. And Toronto FC in these finals have been so good. Their record in finals overall is absolutely brilliant. It's, you know, almost incredibly good. And that kind of gives them, I think, when they come into these finals, a mental edge. It gives them a bit of extra energy, a bit of extra belief. When they go to a shootout, it's the complete opposite. That, you know, they have the history in their heads. There's a lot of players in that team now that are going up to the spot knowing they missed their last one, and it plays on their mind.
Mike, I went over the last 3 cup finals, the ones they've lost in penalties. They've converted just 7 of 14 penalties over those three penalty shootouts. That's 50%. For those of us who are good at math, the actual conversion rate is roughly 75 to 80% typically from the penalty spot. What do you make of that?
Again, I think it's gotten down to a psychological thing at this point for them, because certainly 50% is nowhere near good enough. And
you know, close your eyes, kick the ball as hard as you can, and you probably score more than 50%. You score more than 50%.
They would almost be better to do that. Like Josie Altidore Wednesday night in his walk-up, it was so slow. And I'm sitting there, and it's directly in front of the goal. Where I'm sitting is directly in front of that goal where they're taking the penalty shootout, and he walked up so slowly, and I'm sitting there and saying to myself, he doesn't want to be here. Like, he's dreading this. I almost felt that he was going to.
Then again, somebody could argue that we're being a bit harsh because they have struck the post an inch the other way. It goes in, right, Oli Platt?
It's the same thing outside of shootouts for them, though. Like, they're sub 60% in MLS as well. It's really been an issue for them, and it's hard to figure out why when they have so much quality.
So we have Coach Greg Vanney after the game talk about how it might have been, a good thing that they're not going to be in the Champions League next year. Negatives and positives. Let's hear it.
We all like to win championships, but we also lose out maybe on the possibility of Champions League. That can be good and bad. It's bad because as professionals, it's something that we strive to try to compete for and win. It's not the worst thing in the world that our season doesn't start early next year and we get full preparation and we go. But I don't really look at it that way. I see it as an opportunity lost more than anything.
It's not the worst thing in the world. And you know why I think he's saying that? I think he's saying that because he knows how hard it is to get to a CONCACAF Champions League final. I think we all know and we all agree that that's the best Toronto FC have played. It's the best club we've probably seen. Yeah. For me, it's the best MLS team of all time. I think he knows that they don't have a chance to get back to that situation. So not being in the Champions League is a good thing.
Yeah, I know exactly what he means, and I don't disagree with what he's saying.
Fans don't want to hear it.
But yeah, I think it's a problem that a coach says that and we all kind of nod our heads and say, yeah, he's right, because this is supposed to be the top competition in CONCACAF. And for me, it's a massive issue for the Confederation if you're having teams like Toronto FC saying, well, we'd like to be there, we want to be in competitions like that, but it probably is going to help us that we're not going to be in it next season. Like, you've got to rethink the format of this competition.
Mike, you know what that tournament in 2018 did to TFC. Of course, they didn't make the playoffs after that deep run, completely decimated by injuries. You think that's what Coach Greg Vanney is getting at?
I absolutely think that's what he's getting at. The travel, the different playing services, the different weather conditions that you're playing in, altitude. That 2018 tournament, had they won it, the season looks different. Yeah. But I don't want to say they destroyed themselves in order to get to that final, but it was pretty close because they came out of that tournament so badly beaten up.
What about a big picture comment here just on what what Wednesday night's Cup win for Montreal just means for both these teams moving forward into October? So what does it mean for Montreal and TFC just the rest of the way this season?
Well, for TFC, it's a real momentum killer. They went into that LAFC game looking to get a good result against the top team in the league. They did that. The performance was really good. You were feeling good about this team's playoff hopes all of a sudden, even though they didn't win the game. Now you get this and it just kind of crushes you, and you need a few days to pick yourself up again, and they've got to go again at the weekend. So they're going to have to show some character to regroup and come back from that. And for Montreal, I just thought it was maybe, showing a little bit of a glimmer of hope ahead for them. I thought they had some really good individual performances on the night and over the two legs. And you started to see maybe who some of the building blocks in the future could be.
Yeah. For TFC, I would disagree. I think they'll be able to shake this off. I think they are looking at the MLS Cup playoffs, and I think they might have been guilty of that in this final series. I think Greg Vanney clearly put out a less than superior side in Montreal. It was a better team, in the return leg, but they're looking at MLS Cup playoffs. And for Montreal, winning this competition is something that they can take to their fans and say, here's something, as you say, a glimmer of hope, because the second half of this 2019 season for them has been depressing, to say the least. So this is something that they can build on. For TFC, I'm not sure that it's a huge deal.
I think it's that one thing that Montreal supporters just can kind of hang over TFC's heads, until next year. I know they're going to be watching TFC come playoff time, but still, there's going to be that conversation where, but we got you in the Cup final, and now we're Canada's representative in the CONCACAF Champions League. Was this the best tournament ever? Was this the best Canadian championship ever? It has to be, right? Yeah,
I think so. I think this competition has so much potential. There's so many exciting possibilities when you look at, the growth of the professional game in Canada and what this competition can mean in bringing all the different leagues together. So I think we're only scratching the surface with that. But getting the CPL teams in and getting this properly expanded field for the first time, makes it the best edition ever for me.
Absolutely the best, and by a long way. I mean, you look even back to the beginning rounds where York 9 had barely survived against Blainville. Then, at York Lions Stadium, York took Montreal, the eventual champions, to the limit, to a tremendous final that required penalties to decide it. Not sure that I'm happy that penalties are deciding anything, but it was a fantastic tournament. The expanded with the Canadian Premier League teams in the tournament, I thought really spiced things up. This was fantastic.
We had John Herdman on the panel at halftime Wednesday night at BMO Field, and he talked about how maybe his eyes were open to a few players because of this tournament. Which Canadian players, maybe young players, you think caught the eye of Canada's national team?
Yeah, I thought
because of this tournament.
I thought there were a few, but one who really stood out to me on Wednesday night was Shamit Shome.
Yeah.
I thought he was really good in Montreal's midfield, just really tidy with the ball, intelligent in some of the runs he made. Montreal had a lot of joy down TFC's left-hand side because Maury was playing so high, and I thought Shome took up some really good positions. So he's someone who, has come from FC Edmonton to Montreal, starting to get a chance in their first team now, and I think has a good future.
Shamit Shome was definitely a name that came to mind. I think a couple of guys whose stock was not hurt by this tournament: Richie Larea for Toronto FC and Zachary Brault-Guillard for the Montreal Impact. Brault-Guillard won the Young Player of the tournament. So those two guys certainly helped their stock.
When we get back from break, we're talking Can Champ a little more. We're also talking CPL, big weekend. And yes, we're talking Kurt Larson's fashion. We're buying or selling when we get back from break.